Bene, buongiorno a tutti. Siamo al Museo di Storia Naturale del Mediterraneo che ci ospita per questa giornata di workshop piuttosto operativo che la nostra coorganizzatrice Cinzia Dalmaso, direttrice del Centro Studi per l'Archeologia Pubblica Archeostorie, ha scelto di intitolare Libertà e Partecipazione e poi ci spiegherà perché. È la prima importante giornata organizzata.
This is the first important event that has been organized within the framework of Parchi Partecipativi della Toscana, an initiative that was set up more or less 1 year ago with the intention to draft, to design, carry out and make museums and territories related to museums to make of them real sharing moments, and that should be an active and participatory initiative to raise awareness among citizens in order to understand what are the best possible policies for themselves, for their children, for their grandchildren. And the head of project is Fondazione Atalia, Diritto al Patrimonio Culturale. And within this system and network, the first museums that accepted this initiative is Museo di Storia Naturale del Mediterraneo, who's got a long-standing tradition in this kind of initiatives. It has already been a head of project for some initiatives. For parks in the province of Livorno, and Museo. This museum has decided to shift towards a different approach, which is more oriented towards other objectives, wider objectives. Then Museo Etrusco di Populonia and Parco di Archeologia Condivisa of Poggio del Mulino. Then we have Rosignano Marittimo's Archeological and Civic Museums, Palazzo Bombardieri. The museums based in Scarlino, composed of Centro di Documentazione Riccardo Frankovic and Museo Archeologico Sporto Scabris, Fondazione Musei Senesi, Musei Villa Baciotti in Capannoli, Museo Scienze Planetarie in Prato, which is also related to Natural Science Museum, Pinacoteca Civica in Volterra, and Eco Museo in Volterra, Giuliano Gelli Museum, San Casciano Val di Pesa, Parco Tecnologico Archeologico Colline Metallifiche in Grosseto, and the small Piccolo Museo del Diario e Archivio dei Diari of Fondazione Archivio Diaristico of Piave Santo Stefano. These are the first museums that have decided to be part of this network. Fondazione Aglaia also wanted to be at the forefront with this initiative because it has been working with these projects for several years, and it is also responsible for all the administration part with local authorities. We have started with Passing Progress, a foundation that was created to manage archaeological actions in Populonia, and it decided to be linked to the local authorities to be part of this action in order to be part of these historic moments. And that's what has been happening for 12 years in Poggio del Mulino, which is today a participatory archaeological area where where students, seniors, disabled people can find a common place. And that's why we believe that the only possible path to manage heritage and to manage the relationship between heritage and citizens is the idea of sharing. And I would like to thank you for the trust that was put in Fondazione Agraria. I would like to thank all the curators and directors who accepted to be part of this initiative. I really do hope that this year it will be possible to organize a set of meetings, and this is really a good start with concrete and operating action. And we also do hope that goodwill will have positive benefits for the communities. We have now a full agenda. It will be important to share these moments all together. Thanks to Cinzia Dalmaso. I will give her the floor shortly. And I wish you a great day and a fruitful day. Thank you very much.
Bene, grazie Carolina.
Thank you, Carolina. When Carolina is calling, Cinzia is there, and I really appreciate, and I'm following your work. I'm a journalist. I am specialized in heritage and cultural wealth since last century, and I'm also responsible for a small organization, communication company specialized in museums and parks in Italy. And we also are responsible of a magazine where we try to share best practices for heritage and arts. And we have been working for a scientific magazine. So that's just to tell you that when Carolina, who's a living example for the sharing culture, for heritage and archaeology, as well as for the relationship between arts and citizens, so whenever she's doing anything, I'm actually there for her, because she's really giving a meaningful sense to all these activities, and she finds really some fresh and fruitful ideas in what she has carried out. So I couldn't say no to Carolina, and she asked me to find good European best practices with which the Tuscan participatory museums and parks in Toscana could be involved. And that's why I decided to call Europa Nostra, and Elena Bianchi will be responsible for presenting us Europa Nostra's activities. And this organization has been giving awards for several years for heritage initiatives for many years. We also have the citizens engagement part, and she will tell us about that. And we had several awards, and we will look at these awards to find good examples that could be useful for a networking activity with the Musei Parchi della Toscana. What about the title, Freedom and Participation? People connected from abroad may do not know Giorgio Gabre, who has been a great artist for the Italian culture in the second half of the 20th century. I listened one of his songs the day before. Carolina asked me to organize this event, but freedom and participation, which is the refrain of this song, whose title is Libertà, freedom. And that's why I wanted to give this title to this work, to this workshop, sorry. And the refrain of this song dating back to 1972, freedom is not being on a tree, freedom is not flying like a fly, freedom is not a free place, freedom is participation. What is the meaning of this song? What did Giorgio Gaber wanted to tell us in 1972? He just wanted to counter all these pressures that today are more than ever strong against freedom. So being free is not being alone somewhere in a field, but freedom is participation. We can be free only if we share public wealth altogether. And that's what we can use as a slogan within the framework of heritage, as the Faro Convention was mentioning, a community of people who are identified among heritage and arts because they give value to these arts, and the value is also related to the exchange role that we can develop through arts and heritage. And this is also important to develop new ideas for our future. But what are communities today? That's a recurrent, frequent question I have been asking in the past years. We are living more and more in multi-ethnic societies, and even in small mountain and sea villages where there used to be closed human groups with a common history. Even in this case, we are losing this identity, this unity, and that's what I experienced last week in Venice, where I was participating in a meeting. We are talking about the Laguna community. Some communities do not know anymore what their identity is, and there are migrants getting in touch with these compact communities who are just united by the fact that they live in a closed place. But sometimes this place is anonymous, especially in neighborhoods, in big cities with big buildings. So what can we say about these places? When you arrive in a new place, you feel lost in a way. But if you find a place where you can get the flavor of history, of what this place has represented in the past, everything changes. And so whenever you get in touch with this history, you can share the reality. And that's what happened to me. I'm from Venice and I've been living in Rome for 25 years. I went to live to Rome. I settled down in Rome, and where I live, near my place, there are some historic monuments related to old battles between Garibaldi troops and other soldiers, and every day I can feel that history in my shoes. I really can perceive that history, and you know, I had never studied Garibaldi in a deep way, truly. So that's really new for me. But anyway, all that just to tell you that I didn't know, for example, Pasolini in the past, so I just started reading Pasolini when I moved to Rome. So that is something that can help communities to have that sense of belonging, and all the people in the neighborhood can visit these monuments, and that's great because I feel part of this community who is keeping the memory of the wars that were fought to protect and keep safe the Republic of Rome. So what can experts in heritage do? And that's the answers that will be given by our experts from abroad. We have an open debate in Italy. We have universities in Italy on the one side with traditional events and professional proposals that do not have a concrete structure. And on the other hand, the government has started to make proposals, but nothing concrete has been raised. And yesterday I was talking about that with Carolina and with other speakers who will be here today. I know that professionals are not available to work with teachers because they do not have the right training. So what do we need? We need people who could be ready to work for communities, to serve communities. That looks simple, doesn't it? But they need to be able to make research, to protect heritage, but they need to work with citizens. And we need a deep knowledge of the area, of people, and we need a thorough analysis of the reality, the local history. This is key to be successful. And they also need to make people think about their lives and the value of history. So they need to stimulate communities to understand what they are, where do they come from as well. And when I was in Venice the other days, I started thinking about religion. What do the different religious authorities do? They live with communities, they live with their community, they try to keep alive and active communities. And professionals in the heritage sector need to keep alive and keep active the communities. And this is not an easy task because we need a lot of knowledge and research methods. We have international patterns about that, but we need to sympathize with communities. So that's what is really necessary. But that's really difficult, but that's also even more stimulating than research, than pure research. So I believe that best practices, examples, experiences that we have gathered today will be related to people who have built communities with a certain methodology, with a good structure, but also they put their heart in that. But now let's try to understand who these examples, who these professionals are today. these people have been chosen with Elena Bianchi from Europa Nostra. And now I am glad to give the floor to Elena Bianchi from Europa Nostra, who will let us understand the value of the awards. So, Elena, good morning. I'm very happy to see you, and I'm giving you the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, Cinzia, good morning, Carolina, and all the others connected. Thank you very much for the invitation, not only to speak today, but also in brainstorming with you in selecting the best practices about the topic of today to be shown during this workshop. So as you anticipated, I have a pleasure of introducing you what is the organization I'm working for, and especially the award scheme I've been coordinating for the past 14 years, which are the European Heritage Awards, Europa Nostra Awards. So let's start from Europa Nostra. Europa Nostra is the European voice of civil society, committed to safeguarding and promoting cultural and natural heritage. So basically, we are the largest and the most representative heritage network in Europe, which was founded in 1963. So indeed, this year, we celebrate the 60th anniversary. Just to give an idea about our members, we have about 2,000 members from 67 countries, and they are very varied. So they are national cultural associations, private and public foundations, arts and crafts foundation or organization for promotion of cultural tourism, for example, but also many individual members like Cinzia, for example, and especially also a lot of young members. Anybody can join Europa Nostra. There's all the information on our website, and we also have free membership for young professionals and young people, because we are very keen in also involving them in our organization. And we have four main activities. One is, of course, the networking, peer learning, and capacity building. Because, being a citizens movement, of course, this plays a very important role within our activities. Then we do policy and advocacy, because we, through constant and solid dialogue with European institutions, we have our headquarters are in The Hague in the Netherlands, but we also have a Brussels, an office in Brussels, which of course focuses a lot on this activity of policy and advocacy. Then we campaign to save heritage in danger, especially through a flagship program, which is called 7 Most Endangered, which is basically a list that we publish every year with the 7, like the title says, the 7 most endangered sites in Europe. And being on this list it doesn't mean that we point our finger to the worst practices, but on the contrary, being on the list serves often as a catalyst for action, as an incentive for mobilization and the necessary public and private support. And then the last but not least activity deals with celebrating excellence. So this is basically the European Heritage Awards, Europa Nostra Awards, that I've been coordinating for many years. And this is the highest recognition, European recognition in the in the field of cultural heritage. We started collaboration with the European Commission in 2002 when it was launched. And the main goal is to identify and promote best practices in 5 categories. So conservation and adaptive reuse, research, education, training and skills, citizens engagement and awareness raising, and heritage champion. And talking about the topic of today, so community engagement does play an important role also within the award scheme. And it's also reflected by the overarching selection criteria that the jury uses every year to select the 30 winners. Because as you can see here, community engagement is one of the 5 criteria, together with quality, European significance, result and impact, and knowledge transfer and dissemination. So in the past 20 years, we have managed to collect, and we are still doing it, of course, the best practices. We have reached almost 600 best practices. So we gave almost 600 awards to projects from 34 countries. And you can see them, you can have a look at them on our website. We have an archive with all of them. So when you start doing something new, of course, the best way is to start from checking what it exists and finding inspiration from other countries. And so if you are looking for some inspiration, please do use also our archive online, apart from the 5 that we have selected for you today. So as I mentioned, the awards since 2002 have identified and promoted best practice, not only in the conservation, but also in the announcement of tangible and intangible cultural heritage. We have stimulated the transfrontier exchange of knowledge throughout Europe. We through the awards, we also try to increase public awareness and appreciation of Europe's cultural heritage. And of course, we encourage further initiatives through the power of the example. And also for the winners, of course, there are a lot of benefits. So winning an award doesn't stop with the big celebration that we organize every year, but on the contrary, that's only the beginning, because after receiving an award, we got some feedback from the winners themselves, confirming that they had increased networking and professional opportunities. They increased also footfall to heritage sites, funding and development opportunities, and of course also they had the larger visibility and recognition, not only on local and national level, but also on European level. And this is our awards. So we launch a call for entries every year. So it's open to everybody. There's no fee to submit a project. So the next call will be launched on the 13th of June, on the same day of the announcement of the winners of this year. And to give you an example on this follow-ups with award winners, apart, of course, as an example, the initiative of today, I also wanted to mention an initiative which we implemented with one of the winners from last year, La Paranza Cooperative from Naples. So they won an award in Heritage Champions, and through the work of their cooperative, they showed how cultural heritage can be a vector to change the negative reputation of the neighborhoods. This is what happened in Naples through the work of the cooperative, which opened up the catacombs and organized also a lot of many other activities with the local community. So together with them, we organized last March the first European Heritage Youth Residency on the topic of the Faro Convention and the role of heritage community in the urban regeneration process. So among the more than 150 candidatures that we received, we selected 16 young professionals from 14 countries who spent a week in Naples with the members of a cooperative and took part in meetings with local stakeholders, site visits, and solution building workshops. This is to show you an example on how award winners can share their expertise and their best practices also with other peers and inspire the others. So we hope to organize other similar events also next year. But this is not the only event that we are organizing. Our main event, yearly main event, is the Cultural Heritage Summit, which I want to mention to you because this year will be in Venice. So Cinzia mentioned already Venice in her intervention. So between the 27th and the 30th of September, we will organize several events. So the summit is basically a platform to celebrate excellence in cultural heritage skills and practices, but also to highlight the value of cultural heritage for a sustainable, cohesive, and peaceful Europe. There will be 2 events related to the awards. So I hope that maybe some of you will be able to travel to Venice and attend them. One is the Excellence Day on the 27th of September at Fondazione Cini, during which the 30 winners of this year will give presentations and share their expertise. On the 27th and the 28th, so the day after, we will all be at Palazzo del Cinema for the European Heritage Awards ceremony, which is the European celebration of the winners, and during which we will announce also the winners of the Public Choice Award and the Grand Prix. And it's open to everybody upon registration, which will open in August. And so there will be our president, Cecilia Bartoli, hosting the events together with, we don't have a European commissioner at the moment, so but for sure there will be a high representative from the European Commission as well. But the summit also includes other events. There's a program on our website, so there are some policy debates as well. So I hope that many of you will join us on this occasion, because as we said, sharing is really important, and the summit is definitely an occasion to meet in person and sharing the best practices. Thank you. This is what I wanted to share with you, but I also want to thank the winners which have been invited today, because they all enthusiastically accepted our invitation. So this also shows their willingness to share their stories and inspire you. Thank you.
Beh, grazie davvero Elena per questa presentazione. Thank you, Elena, for your presentation that showed us the work carried out by Europa Nostra for cultural heritage and also for the dissemination. Nowadays in Europe, we talk about culture, cultural heritage a lot, and that is thanks to a great lobby carried out by many players, but in particular by Europa Nostra. So we thank you for your hard work over the years and also for future initiatives. Now, I am from Venice, so I will be there in September on the 27th or 28th, and together with Carolina, we decided to go. So I do believe that others among you will decide to go. I thank you to mention La Paranza. It's an experience from Naples showing a bottom-up management of cultural assets. It's a group of young people who took charge the management of tombs, catacombs, together with other players to revitalize that district. La Paranza's experience can be associated to what I said about the role played by the animator of a community who is like a religion. And actually, the idea was launched by Don Lofredo, a priest who was very sympathetic, and he was able to prepare people professionally. And now these people animate La Paranza and all the activities in La Sanità district, which is a downtown district in Naples. And that district was very poor. And now this is an example of a good experience of dialogue and rebirth. But to do so, you have to be constant. Involving a community is not an easy task. It takes years. You have to know people. You have to know the area. I think that the provided examples and the examples being the object of future presentations show the hard work, the open-mindedness required to establish and animate new communities. Now we have with us Francesca Merz, who is a professional in building up communities, not only for cultural heritage, but for culture in general. She is very experienced and she's an expert for projects. She is very experienced, and that's why we invited her as keynote speaker for today. On one hand, she's going to share with us some of her experiences, and on the other hand, we will think with her about the role played by these experiences for our future.
Buongiorno a tutti. Ho fatto di tutto per poter essere qui e sono molto contenta di essere qui. Spero di riuscire ad andare subito al punto. Vi racconto però un pochettino brevemente da dove ho iniziato. Io sono una storica dell'arte e per molti anni ho lavorato per una società di organizzazione mostre. A forza di appunto organizzare eventi culturali, insomma grandi mostre, si parla di 20 anni fa, perché oramai è passato diverso tempo, e facendo un'analisi di quello che le mostre portavano.
It takes back to 20 years ago, and on the basis of an analysis with the different territories, I realized that the different kind of public who were attending exhibitions the public was always the same, notwithstanding the nature of the exhibition, because there was a link, there was a perception of the museum, there was a bond with the place. So museums were limited to a selected public, and there was no way to change the public according to the different documents, to the different exhibitions. So there was a kind of limit, and nobody went beyond the perimeter of museums. And on the basis of this analysis, I tried to find different solutions, and I tried to put all the contents that were organized within museums outside the museum. So I tried to put some contents outside in order to let people know what the museum would have organized in the near future. So I was an employee, sorry, and I was not so popular among my bosses because I was trying to organize different initiatives with their own budget. And last year, after several years, I founded a cooperative company, Mare. And our idea was mainly to try to figure out any kind of cultural event starting from communities. So that's normally the opposite, because we normally organize events within a specific place, a specific area, but this is not new. And Francesca was talking about the Faro Convention that introduced this new method. So, the idea of cultural events and property has been reversed, and we changed the order. So cultural heritage is not only for itself. You can also organize and try to attribute a different value on the basis of what the community is doing. And this is a new change. So if you think about a community where people can tell me that this piece of paper is very important for their evolution. So the whole idea of heritage, of cultural heritage, is a priority. So things are totally reversed compared with the past. And thanks to the Faro Convention as well, we were able to design new projects according to this concept, to this idea. And before us, I'm just going to give you some examples. Just before us, some museums had already started. Leicester Museum, where you find a high level of involvement of local communities. They are asking citizens to write the different captions to be put under pieces of art. So this is an active participation. So citizens are asked to write captions under to be put beneath the pieces of art on the basis of their emotions. And other examples can be the reorganizations of some museums in Australia. during the Cook celebrations, and Australia realized that we could no longer say that Cook had discovered Australia, because Australia existed before Cook came to Australia, and that was the beginning of a new start. So all the objects, all the pieces of art of Aborigine origin were totally changed in their philosophy. So the whole museum structure was changed after this realization. And for example, some objects had already been put together in a different order, while according to local communities, the rules were totally different. So musical objects, musical instruments for Aborigines, we have 130 communities, local communities in Australia. So that was totally different, and 130 communities were involved in the museum reorganization, and that was a big challenge, and that's what Australian museums are doing at the moment. And many of the objects were put in warehouses, because for local communities, these objects still had the soul of their ancestors, so they could not be displayed. So they were put aside, and they accepted to display only a part of objects. And one last example could be the reorganization of World Museum in Vienna. This is an anthropological museum where it is more possible to involve communities, but of course other museums could also do that exercise. And as it was declared by the director, critical points were absorbed as part of history. So what happened? They listened to the local communities before reorganizing the museum, but they also included this contribution in their project. And even when the communities did not agree about some objects, they used these weak points as an opportunity. And so this is all included in the history of this reorganization. I proposed a lot of international examples because in Italy it is more difficult to have public calls for reorganization or to rethink their structure. In our local realities and through the projects that I will focus on, we are trying to focus on accessibility, and access is not only a way to make disabled people access the cultural heritage, but we also need to give these people the necessary tools to guarantee access. And of course, cultural heritage needs to have a bottom-up or an approach, and all our projects are mainly based on that. And the first example is the UNESCO Bureau in Florence, which is working on a project, and every year we try to valorize a different place in the city. They started last year, and they were focusing on the city's walls. And they were talking about material objects, but there was also a part that has disappeared. And this year we will work on Via San Gallo and Piazza della Libertà. And the idea was to organize celebrations with experts showing the different places. But we asked them if they had listened to the local community, to the inhabitants. And we have started up this project. We are listening residents, all the owners of different shops. We also are listening to the different stakeholders who are based in the area. So we have people living in the surrounding area. We also have students because there are some universities. So this is quite a wide range of experience that we can gather. And we involved also the university. This is a small project, but a very interesting one. And students, architectural students, are drafting new elements to be put in Piazza San Gallo and Via della Libertà. So these parts will be just temporary, and there will be different analyses, different studies. And one of the main analyses has been listening to ancient memories, listening to what the problems and the issues are in this special and particular street. And there will be an event on the 24th of June. So they asked they asked people to show and to talk about the different problems. And the project has lasted 6-7 months. But the fact that we focused only on one street gave us the opportunity to have a map and to have a clearer picture of the situation. And we also were able to make almost 200 interviews that allowed us to have a better picture. And we also were talking about the different needs, and we also had an exchange with disabled people. So our analysis is also based on that. I'm going to make another example. We are also working in Sicily, in Piazza Armerina, in Calenzano Alto, and in Florence, Giardino delle Rose, which is a public park, where we decided to create a path for blind people. And we tried to understand whether that could make sense, whether it could make sense to have blind people touching flowers. And so we involved the local inhabitants, but also blind people who have started to work with us on this project. And I accepted this idea, and I say that could be fun. So shall we do that together? And we worked together, and it is true that, as Cinzia was saying, when you want to sympathize and to create a bond with people, with local people, you start from scratch and you have a common project, and the number is always higher, and every day we have somebody new who is asking information about this path, and people who want to contribute. And this common project, this shared project, is not only going to be submitted to communities at different times, but the idea is to have a common project to be built together. Of course, at some point you need to finalize it, but everyone has a different responsibility. Local communities and other people are not experts in museum organization. So everyone is contributing, is playing his or her own role, and we try to get towards a shared position to finalize our project. But every time we can amend our project, and that's what is happening in Sicily. We are organizing these paths in these 3 different municipalities, and we try to ask the local people what they could expect from this initiative. And even in that case, that was a shared project, a shared initiative, and the local community was really helpful. And sometimes telling about a piece of art, telling about the different materials is not conveying a human touch. So that's why local communities wanted to be included, to talk about their experience related to the local reality. And the final product, and that's what we are also doing in Calenzano. So the final result of our action is based on historical backgrounds, but also about interviews, memories, and all the information that have been gathered by the different citizens. And even in that case, it has been a long work, and citizens are supposed to appoint the most adequate people to tell these stories. And of course, if a museum had to do that all alone, that wouldn't have been the same. And the product wouldn't have been the same, and it would have been maybe shorter, but it's not the same. And one last point, the other topic which is really needed is scheduling our activities. So when we decide to go for this approach, it is obvious that that it takes some time, and in any call for proposals, we have this method. So sometimes even for cultural heritage, you are asked for a digital project, an exhibition, an educational project, and communities are not seen as an added value in this kind of initiatives, and there is no separate budget for that. So the lack of a budget, the lack of local communities in this project is that citizens are more and more detached from what they are supposed to see. So if you do not include citizens, the result will be a total detachment. And we are asking citizens to be included in a way. So the product that is proposed normally can be perceived in a different way. So that means that we need to have a cultural change. So if you do not involve citizens, if citizens do not have that sense of belonging, probably these people will never visit the museum or the exhibition. So as the Faro Convention is also mentioning, it is necessary to design cultural heritage and museums in a different way. So we need to have the knowledge of people. And secondly, if the museum is considered as a part of the local community will also tend to protect cultural heritage. So we are not willing to that does not mean that we are not in favor of museum development. This new methodology will have citizens more and more involved. So this is the end of my presentation. There may be so many things to say, but I will stop here. I hope my contribution was useful. It was really fruitful. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you for sharing all this experience, all this knowledge. So this workshop is supposed to be interactive, and so together with all the speeches that will be presented, we will have a Q&A session, and we have decided to organize that moment just to have a further analysis of what our speakers have presented. So because we need to have a thorough understanding of the different projects. Because these examples are supposed to be used and shared within our future activities. So now we have a question for you, Francesca.
Ci chiedevamo con Carolina.
And you talked about these projects in a very general way, but who are the responsible organizations? Are you talking about the different projects? You talked about Florence, for example. You also talked about Sicily. So who are the responsible organizers? For UNESCO is the UNESCO Bureau in Florence, and DIDA, the architectural faculty. And for Sicily, we were selected by a tender, and this is a tender that was organized by the Ministry of Economics, and it was related to the reorganization of museums and villages. So we decided to work on these actions. And then for Calenzano, we were selected for an initiative focused on Calenzano Alto. Via delle Rose is part of a tender that make us being selected by the municipality of Firenze. And then another initiative for Cascine. So Question number 2 now. You said that in any case, these tenders were not related to participatory events, that was just for events, and you told us that participatory actions means more budget and more investments. So how could you match the proposed budget to how could you match that with a different activity? So how could you manage that? Because what you are proposing is more time consuming and is also more expensive. And this is, you know, a very important questions, and this requires a business approach.
We decided to allocate resources not on a tender by tender basis, but according to the budget, according to the financial resources. So generally, we decided to allocate a part of those profits to participatory items, participatory activities, in order to involve citizens and also schools. It depends on the type of projects, on the type of citizens to be involved. So there is a part which is totally devoted to that. So in other words, for some projects, we simply have been very good and we got some tenders allowing us to earn more money. In other cases, projects are parts of activities that allow us to earn some money, to invest in projects we have no money for. So since to us this method is essential, internally we have a kind of division, a kind of department for participatory activities. And so we have money taken from different expenses item. So it's a kind of corporate investment made in order to carry out specific practices institutionally in the future. Question number 3, very quickly. You are a kind of outsiders. You carry out projects. Do you provide a kind of continuity for projects or not? Or once the project is over, that's it? How do you, what kind of project and investment you make in order not to lose what you have done? Wonderful question, but it's also very sad at the same time. So I just would like to add something about the previous question. So yes, it is a corporate investment, but it is also something that on our side, we as interpreters, we consider it as an added value. So it is an investment, right? But it is also a way to add value to the final product. In terms of continuity, we have been trying to launch products such as initiatives that will stay, such as podcasts or setting up. So once the project ended, once the community being involved, each single individual product stays there. Or we have pathways. For UNESCO, for example, we created more or less willingly, we set up a kind of affection bond with the place. So at the end of the project, we decided to be a kind of small equipment able to keep on encouraging to go to that place through small events. As far as we are concerned, from the operational point of view, we have to be there because, for example, Via San Gallo, residents, people being involved in this process who did not meet in the past, afterwards, they set up some initiatives to carry out together. So once in a while, once every 2 months, we go there to activate the projects. This is something that is for free for us, so it is not part of the project, but it provides a continuity on a local level. For Sicily, the situation is a little bit more difficult, frankly speaking. Initially, the participation was very high, but afterwards we encountered many difficulties in implementing the project. And this is not due to the fact that we were in Sicily, but it was related to the political people being involved. For Calenzano, projects will go ahead. Step by step, little by little. So you triggered a circuit, a loop that is able to keep on going thanks to your support. Carolina, a very last question. Yes, a naughty question. So for these tenders, so you identify the tender and what next? I mean, are you proposing the tender to the community or vice versa? Both. Sometimes tenders have been designed and won by us completely. Then, even when we won the tender for Giardino delle Rose project, for the tactile pathway, we could also give up, but immediately we organized a participatory event just to understand whether it made sense or not. When they told us, yes, it makes sense, we decided to go ahead. But you won the tender first, yes. In some other cases, communities look for us, contacted us, and then we try to find the right tender together. That was the case of Calenzano, for example. They strongly wanted to enhance a part of San Donnino and Calenzano. These two communities do not get well that much, but for many, many different reasons, I will skip on. They would like to find something enabling them to overcome this quarrel. So we found out a tender and we co-worked together, trying to understand what tools, considering the budget, what tools could put together these two communities, allowing them to overcome this old quarrel. That was very nice because the communities decided to make jokes about this quarrel. So that was very nice and fun. Thank you very much. Time flies. So we have to start the second session of this morning event with the participation of the winners of European Heritage Awards. I thank them all. I see that they are all connected. So thank you very much because they accepted the invitation with a great enthusiasm immediately. So they were immediately available to work with us, and we really want to listen to their presentations. I just want to add that we asked a couple of questions, Carolina and I, but afterwards, the audience could ask questions. And probably we can ask technicians to have a mobile mic, or you can join the podium here. You can come here at the podium so that you can ask your questions. Whenever you have a question to ask, please come here at the podium. So please do so, because we really have to understand the meaning of these projects. Let's start immediately from the first one, and I apologize for my mispronunciation. Eva Kapkin, she comes from Netherlands. She represents Heritage Quest for Erfgoed Gelderland. It was a very important project with a great participation of citizens to study the territory from the archaeological point of view. Eva, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. If the audio
yes,
works.
Eva, it's perfect. We hear you perfectly.
Thank you. I will start the presentation. So, like this. Well, I will indeed be talking about. Oh, I still see. Can you see my presentation?
Mode? Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah. Great. Oh yeah, I can see I can see it on your screen. Well, I will be talking about Heritage Quest, which is a citizen science project in archaeology, within the Netherlands. Wait. Well, there are a few. I will first shortly describe the basic idea behind the technique behind the project. Well, everything which the citizens participated in scientific research. So they were investigating, analyzing maps, elevation maps, which were made by LiDAR. LiDAR is a technique. It's short for light detection and radar, but you can forget that immediately. What it does, in the last few years, the Netherlands was completely covered by this new technique. And in this process, a small aeroplane was flying over the Netherlands. And inside this plane, there was a LiDAR machine, which is more or less like sonar. I think we all know that from the sea. So it sends a laser beam towards the surface, and this laser beam is then returned towards the plane. And if it takes longer, then the elevation is greater, is smaller. If it's shorter, then it's higher. Well, the big advantage of this new technique is that it's very detailed, and secondly, it can cover everything. So, for example, in the part, our research area, the part of the Netherlands that we've studied, it's very forested. So, as you can see over here, this is a typical part. Normal elevation measurements are really they struggle with vegetation. For example, on the photo to the left, you see my daughter walking in the forest, and on the right-hand side and on the left-hand side of the path, there are actual burial mounds, but you cannot see them. But this new technique, for this new technique, vegetation is no problem. And an image will look like this. It's extremely detailed, and you can see all kinds of stuff. For example, all these well, now here in yellow, small locations, they are burial mounds. They are places where people in the past, in prehistory, 5,000 years ago, they buried their dead, and they constructed a small mound surrounding them. With this new technique, we can see a lot of heritage still hidden below the trees. And for archaeologists alone, this was too much of a task. It's enormous what is still hidden, undiscovered, well, in the Netherlands, but in Europe as a whole. So we asked the volunteers to help us, to help doing this archaeological research, and it is proper research. We had a research question, a methodology, and people were actually physically helping us with that. Well, we covered these parts of the Netherlands. So it's for the Netherlands, it's a huge region. Of course, we are only a small country, but still, it's over 2,000 square kilometers that was covered, and over 6,500 participants joined the search, which was incredible. We never expected that it would take off as it did. So, what are the aims of the project? Well, we started out with a scientific question. The team consists of academic archaeologists, and we simply, this new technique provided the opportunity to learn so much more about the prehistory of the Netherlands. This was our first question. However, it was impossible for archaeologists alone to do all this kind of research. So that's why we started thinking about citizen science involving the public. So in this way, we could gather a lot of data, and it was also used in an artificial intelligence automated detection project, which I will not go into with this presentation. But of course, asking help for citizens was not merely from a scientific point of view. I myself was at that time working at Erfgoed Gelderland, which is a heritage organization which is actively involved in public engagement, public participation in archaeology. So from our point of view, for us it was important that to create awareness amongst the public in the Netherlands for in this case the archaeological heritage that is surrounding every one of us. Because if people are more aware of the amount of heritage that is available, they will respect it more, they will like it more, and hence they will protect it better. And by actually participating in citizen science, in academic research, people, we have carried out several questionnaires, and people, they all responded like, we now feel more connected to this heritage that starts right beyond our back garden. They feel a sense of ownership and also a sense of place. They feel more in sync with their surroundings. So that was one of the big aims from the Erfgoed Gelderland perspective. The third party involved were government, so the local authorities who have the task of safeguarding the heritage in, for example, in policies and in infrastructural projects, etc. So from the very start, all three parties were completely connected, and I think that cooperation with all the stakeholders is vital if you want to start a public participation project. And the stakeholders are not just governments, but they are the people participating themselves. We have tried to make the project as open and as participatory as possible. We have very soon in the project, we started a board of citizen scientists. So a board of people joining the search themselves. They are representatives of all the participants, and they have a say in all decisions concerning the projects. We have asked for bottom-up research question. What are you interested in? And for example, there was one of the things that we've discovered. Archaeologists did not know about it. It is something that the participants, the citizen scientists themselves, they saw on the maps, and then we started investigating it, and they brought up suggestions and discussions. The Netherlands is like many other countries in Europe is now they are going to sign the Faro Convention, in which heritage and participation are key. So we try to make the project immediately from the start along the lines of the Faro Convention. Key to all this is that participation should be open to everyone. And for that reason, we made an online platform We joined the Zooniverse, which is, if you do not know it, this afternoon, this evening, you should visit it. It's a citizen science platform where you can do all kinds of research. You can count penguins, or you can transcribe documents. It's great. All kinds of. It's great to do, and it has a huge base. So millions of people participate in this on this platform. In one way or the other. So we made a very short, very simple online platform in which the maps are shown. Every map was shown, was investigated by, well, at least 15 people. And we asked very simple, short questions. People, when they visit the website, they got a short tutorial, and after a few minutes they could start, and then they could learn to become better while doing. But the threshold for starting is very, very low. So you can do it from your own couch at any moment you like. All you need is internet. That's the only thing. Well, we asked 3 questions. We searched for burial mounds. So, as I explained, places where people in the past, so Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, so 5,000 years ago to, well, 2,000 years ago. Celtic fields, they are more or less Iron Age agricultural field systems. So 1100 to 200 BC, and charcoal kilns, places where people transformed wood into charcoal. And they look on the maps, they look like this. So these were the only 3 things that people were needed to mark. And they simply had to place a dot on a location that they thought was a burial mound, or draw a line around one of these walls that you can see of the Celtic field systems. Very simple. But the results, they were, well, astonishing. Also, we never expected that the project would have so many results. Well, as said, we covered over 2,000 square kilometers. Well, almost 7,000 people participated, and the burial mounds, they doubled in number. So instead of about 1,000 burial mounds, we now think that we have 2,000 burial mounds. The Celtic fields, they tripled in area. And the charcoal kilns, when we started the project, about 10, 15 were known, and now we have about 950. So extremely, enormous amount more. I will go slightly into detail about what we have found. It might seem a bit dry, it's proper archaeology, but I do this because that's also key in engaging the public. We have done a few questionnaires, and every one of the participants, they said, we would like to, what is important for us is that we do, contribute to actual scientific research, that what we are doing, what we spend our few 3 hours on is useful, that we actually contribute to the knowledge about archaeology in this case. So I think that's very important if you want to involve the public, is that you make clear what the use is, why it is valuable, why it is important. Now, in our case, the Celtic fields, instead of when the project started, 14 square kilometers were known. The public, the participants, the citizen scientists, they now found 38 square kilometers. So it's a huge amount. And what you can see is that large parts of the Netherlands, which are heavily built, there are still everywhere you can find these traces from the Iron Age. So 3,000 years ago, it's still present. The same counts for the burial mounds, but for the burial mounds, we needed validation in the field. So we joined together with the volunteers and professional and non-professional archaeologists. We went into the field added with students from Leiden University, and we started coring. Well, it goes too far to explain, but we in every mound we did 3 cores, and on the discolorations of the soil you can actually see whether it's a burial mound from 5,000 years ago, or if it's a natural hill. Well, what we've done is in 6 weeks, we unfortunately in the middle of the winter, it was very, very cold, but still the participants, they joined and they were so enthusiastic. So we investigated over 300 mounds, so potentially burial mounds, but also natural hills. You can see them here in green. But there were also, 80 of them were actual ancient burial mounds. Well, this is so we were able by this field work, by this test set, we were able to extrapolate these data, and based on that we have a expectancy rate. So you can we can now predict where there are burial mounds still present in the Netherlands. Of course, this is quite dry, but this is, as I said, this is something that the volunteers are really interested in the techniques behind it, and so it's important, and we have always tried to do that through webinars and through lectures and written articles to take the participants to guide them through this whole process. And so that's it's actual. The participants are part of the academic process. So it's a participation in research. It's a joint effort. It increases ownership, and it's an exchange of ideas. And citizen science is a great means of creating knowledge, academic knowledge for science, but also knowledge among the participants, among the community, which increases awareness, and it increases the connection between the public and the heritage. And through citizen science, it's not only the people, you have a very wide impact. We were very fortunate that we got a lot of media attention. We have, well, the national television news, for example, they interviewed the participants. We got a lot of, well, media attention. And this is, for us, that's very important because a lot of people, not only the participants themselves, but also the wider public, they get informed about the heritage. So the archaeological heritage, the burial mounds that are, well, still present everywhere. And through this, well, bigger attention, people become more aware, and which will lead to protection, to better protection. What is also important, what I would like to stress, is by involving the public. You get a lot of additional knowledge. So the team was, we are all trained archaeologists, but the participants, they have a background which is very diverse. For example, I've shown this image already. This is a reconstruction made by one of the participants, and it's 100% accurate. It's the actual landscape over there. It's a reconstruction of one of the Celtic fields, and he has well, redrawn all the lines, all the walls that we have found, and well, populated it with trees and with farms, etc. So this is actually the work of one of the participants, and they have knowledge. Sometimes it's academic knowledge, sometimes it's practical knowledge, sometimes it's really beneficiary. So in our projects, the results have a very practical use, as well. So the governments, the predictive maps, so the maps with all the heritage that was discovered, they are used by the governments, so they can protect it and use it in policy and planning. We have provided that to terrain owners, so when they, for example, have to do work in the forest, they can use, they now know where there's archaeological heritage. Of course, it's used in science, and it's also used in the local community. Signs are being put up. So look, over here you can see traces of prehistoric societies in this form. So it's increases knowledge and awareness, and this will it does result in appreciation and protection. And for us, the receiving last year the European Heritage Europa Nostra Award was a great, an extreme reward, and it was a sign of appreciation for all the hard work that the participants have put in the project, and have all the spare time they have invested in understanding and experiencing understanding and elucidating our shared archaeological heritage. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Well, thanks to you, Eva, for this wonderful presentation.
Grazie.
My very first question was, how did you identify and recruit the volunteers? You were talking about people participating, but you didn't tell us how. Did you make a call or what? And then you talked about people who were, collaborating with you for a longer time. Other people were coming just for a day. So I wanted to better understand how you involved the citizens.
Yeah, well, we did this several ways. First of all, we used the context that we already had. So we approached, for example, the archaeological societies in the region. So volunteers who were already interested in archaeology. And then we put adverts in the local newspapers. I went into the region, so in not in every, but in a lot of villages and larger towns, I gave introductory lectures about hi, we have a new project and you can all get involved, you can help, it's about your environment, it's about your back garden, more or less. And that's so we promoted that in the local newspapers, and then it got on the local radio stations, etc. And people were telling, their neighbors. They were saying, we noticed. I did a small poll. So how did you, for the people who went to one of these introductory meetings, how did you know about this project? And he said a lot of people saw it in the local newspaper, but others said, well, my neighbor said, hey, you're interested in history, you should go to this meeting. And that's the first the first round of participants. And once we started, it started more or less snowballing. Then we went to national newspapers, television, etc. And then it blew up.
It was a big effort. My compliments. I understand it was really a big thing and really fantastic. Anyway, I have two quick questions, but I know that Carolina has a question as well. So let's start from Carolina's question.
Grazie. Io la pongo in italiano.
I'm going to ask this question in Italian. Hi, Eva. You are an archaeologist, aren't you? I am also an archaeologist, and I've been working with volunteers for 12 years. And these volunteers are here today with us because it's raining today and they cannot work. So I just wanted to know from you how the competent body, so the responsible organizations, we have Beaux-Arts and Ministry of Culture in Italy. So what is the position of the competent bodies towards these initiatives, and what is the role of professionals for this kind of events? Because this is very hard for us in Italy. So I just wanted to know how the situation is in your country.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's very similar. So well, the largest part of our project was online. So it was online research, simply searching for potential archaeological heritage. For the burial mounds, we went into the fields, but in the Netherlands, as I think it's the same in Italy, the regulations about who can do actual field work, actual coring, are very strict. So the field work was really a joint effort in which professional archaeologists were joined by volunteers. So there always had to be, volunteers cannot core by themselves. They are not allowed by the government, by the law, to do field work on their own. So it was the University of Leiden University was responsible for the field work. And we professional archaeologists, we always were present and were doing the course, and we were training and explaining the volunteers. And at the same time, it was also a field school for students in archaeology from Leiden University. And that worked really well. The students and the volunteers together, they were teaming up, and they were doing training together. And that's something that both students and volunteers really liked a lot. But I think field work is really difficult for volunteers, because of the legal aspect in the Netherlands as well.
Well, two very, very quick questions because we are running out of time.
Due domande. Allora, quindi
Donors.
I am sorry, I could only hear the Italian.
Landowners. Did they resist? Did you have?
I proprietari hanno avuto questa difficoltà, hanno avuto i proprietari terrieri come si sono confrontati?
Yeah, I think I understand, but the Italian translation is in my ears. But I think the question is whether the landowners were making problems. Yeah, that's definitely a problem. No, not a problem. What we did is we engaged them from the very, very start, and it took a bit of convincing in some cases, but most people, they were really interested when we explained, these burial mounds, they are lying in this forest for such a long time. They became interested in it, and also at this point the Dutch government is like, the European government, they have to respect the archaeological heritage. So by doing this research, we in a sense, of course, we discovered more burial mounds, but also we validated a lot of these potential burial mounds. So we could also say these and these and these and these hills, they are not burial mounds. You do not have to. So we found new ones, but we also discredited a lot of others. So in that sense, that was a very convincing argument.
Certo, capisco. Parlo in italiano che è meglio, capito che... risposta velocissima.
Very quick question. Question. How long was the project?
We started the online quest was in total, the volunteers searched for about 5.5 months. The second part, the field research, and especially analyzing the field data, it took a lot longer. But that's also because we were, we spent 6 weeks in the field, but in different episodes. And we had to deal with Corona lockdowns in between. So the field work in total took about 1.5 years, also the processing of it. So we first started in 2019, and we, with the first part, and there were a few, during Corona, there were a few, slow times where we had lockdowns and we could not do anything. But we, last January, finally, more or less closed the project. So in total, it spent 3 years, but with ups and downs.
Ho capito. Beh, grazie tantissimo. Complimenti, Eva, per questo.
Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you for this exhaustive presentation, for this marvelous project. And now we are going to see the next project. We are flying to Portugal from the Netherlands. We have here Gabriela La Rocha and Doris Santos, Sociedad Artístico Musical. Then our speaker will present herself. And now we are getting directly into museum, because this project involved seniors in many activities in different museums in Portugal. But now let's just listen to Gabriela and Doris. I give you the floor.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know if you can see me. Okay. So good morning, everyone. I would like to start by thanking for the opportunity to present this project, Museum in the Village. Here with me, I have a very special project partner, Doris Santos, director of Costume National Museum in Lisbon. And I also have one of the artists of project, Humberto Giacomo. Okay, so let's start it. This project is an artistic and social intervention initiative that brings together museums and villages from 26 Portuguese municipalities, with the purpose of reducing social isolation and fostering connections, human connections between through cultural heritage. So the project was created in 2019 from a collaborative process between a group of museum professionals and artists with experience in social project and inclusion through arts. And this project is promoted by SAMP, Sociedade Artística Musical dos Pousos. We are based in Leiria City in Portugal. And actually, we are not a museum. SAMP is an institution composed of a philharmonic and a music school. And we develop a lot of social projects that takes music to the society from the very first stage of life until the final days, going to hospitals, houses, schools, and in this case, museums and villages. So in this project, our target group are senior citizens who live mostly in rural and secluded areas. So let me briefly show how it works. Okay, so together with our partners, which are local authorities, museum professionals, politicians, local leaders, we identify the communities that has low population density, and based on local information, the museum bring a piece from the collection to present it in the village. Yes, we take museum objects to present it in the village. And after this interaction with the museum piece in the village, the participants in the communities create a new artistic artwork based on what they consider to be the most significant and representative of their village and also of themselves. Here we have some pictures of the co-creation process. In this case, this village, this specific village, they decided to create artwork based on the wind, since this is a very important resource in this village. So finally, the participants have the opportunity to present their collective artwork at the museum. And to do so, we provide them with an artistic performance through where everyone is invited to participate. And so in a very succinct way, that's how the project develops. But today, we didn't come just to talk about the step-by-step of the project. We would like to share what we consider to be the most significant, which are the experience and histories lived through these interactions between communities, museums. So let me present you some of those experiences. So take a look at this picture for a while. Here, the museum brought a sculpture alluding to the miracle of San Martin, which, for those who don't know, it speaks about the power of solidarity gesture. Speaks about how the power of the solidarity gesture can even change raining climate and bring back the sun to the place. So this sculpture was displayed in a fish market and was part of the space for about 2 months. And inspired by this narrative, inspired by this sculpture, and creating a relationship with their own territory, the community, this specific community, decided to create their own version of the sun, made with resource from the corn rusks cultivated by the project participants. And here is the result, the final result. The name of this artwork is "The Sun of Union is for Everyone." And the participants not only create the artwork, but also they choose its name and the message that they want to share with the public. Another very interesting experience happened when a sculpture of almost 3 tons was installed at the entrance of a village. And here on your right, you have Manuel. He lives in Ateânia, the village that received this sculpture, which is also a kind of bench. And take a look at this picture for a while, because I really like this picture, because even with the mask on, you can feel his joy. And the sculpture was much appreciated in that village, so much so that when it was time for this artwork returned to the museum, you can guess what happened. The community didn't like the idea at all. So they requested, and the museum allowed the sculpture to stay 1 month longer, but obviously it had to return. And the sculpture spot got empty. So this community decided to create their own bench. And here are the results. So in this process, the participants worked on the concept of the bench. They decide, for example, how many seats, the orientation, even the material, because for them, using the stone was very important. But here, since we don't know how to work with the stone, we don't know how to create a bench of stone, we decide to create with them a different process. And so they choose a local stone to inspire the shape of the bench. And here they had the help of digital technologies to assist in this process. In this case, a 3D print robot from one of our partners, and which printed the same shape of the stone, as you can see. It printed the same shape using cement. It's not exactly a stone, but it is the shape of the stone that they selected. And you can be sure that this small picture of these two ladies cannot convey the beauty of the landscape of Ateana. And this work traveled 100 kilometers to enter in Fernanda and Alfredo's house in the village of Fetelaria. And their local balcony not only received a contemporary artwork, but also became a meeting point for the project participants. This is very interesting because what happens when a community decides that its artwork is born and remains in the village? It doesn't go to the museum, doesn't go back to the museum. The result is this carpet painted in one of the village streets, and it's still there, available for who wants to visit it. We had a lot of special moments during this process, the whole process, but winning an European award heritage was definitely for sure one of the highlights. We celebrated the award with our partners, with some of community representatives, but before we fixed the medal, the bronze medal in the wall of SAMP, we decided to take it to travel a little bit, and we shared with the whole community of the project. While it may sound a cliche, I think winning an international prize like Europa Nostra has installed a deep sense of pride and happiness in the community. So we were very, very amazed by this award. So given so many meetings and experience, what fascinates me most in this project is to think that after a long time where museums were forced to close the doors, we faced a pandemic, of course, like everybody, these people had a completely and unique moment where the museum experience went beyond appreciation and reached action. They danced, they sang inside the museum, and they can indeed say that they were part of that space, and that moment became a part of them. So let me share a very short teaser about the project. Just a minute. Oops, sorry.
Non sentiamo l'audio.
Sorry?
We cannot hear.
Ah, okay, sorry. I will share again. Just a minute.
Set up the audio.
Yes.
Museum in the...
Just a minute, okay.
A Pianha é pequenina, mas é uma aldeia com história. Fazer parte de museu vai ficar para a memória.
Museum in the Village embodies art as a place where museums, artists and communities come together to share and enjoy artistic creation. We engage with elderly people who live in rural secluded areas. 13 museums and 13 villages from 26 Portuguese counties connect by mutually experiencing their cultural patrimony. Museums provide a masterpiece of their own collection to be on temporary exhibition in the heart of each village. On their turn, the communities make use of their own memories and traditions to create a collective artwork. A new collection is born by the hands of the participants. These artworks represent what they perceive as most valuable from their village and themselves. Each collection is then celebrated by everyone and inaugurated at the museum, where it rightfully stays on temporary exhibition. Museum in the Village promotes emotional connections, inviting the elderly to participate on a journey across their own cultural heritage.
Okay, so none of this would be possible without our partners, museums, and local authorities, sponsors. And so this project is promoted by SAMP, co-financed by POISE, Portugal 2020, and through Portugal Inovação Social, and has the municipality of Leiria as a social investor, and Rede Cultura as a bigger partner. Well, talking about bigger partners, my colleague Doris Santos, director of the National Museum, the Custom National Museum in Lisbon, can provide more insight, as she is one of the museum professionals who had been directly involved in this project since its inception and through the entire process. So I will give the word to Doris. Doris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It was a privilege to be here with you, sharing this beautiful project. Now, as Gabriela said, I'm director of National Custom Museum in Lisbon, but before I worked in Nazaré Museum. Nazaré is a little village of Portugal near the sea. And we were in the territory of near Leiria, and I made part of a group, a passionate group of colleagues from different museums that one day were invited to be together around the table and in our desks to think about a project that we can promote the aim of Leiria be a European capital of culture in 2027. That's why this project began. And we would like that museums add a word in participation, active participation in that aim. But we didn't want anymore an exhibition. We would like more. We would like people participating. We would like people coming together and create new things. And as we saw in the movie shown by Gabriela, started by someone saying, to make part of the museum will be part of my memory. And that was our first aim, that people think museums as spaces, as not only building, but as institutions where they can belong, where they can make part of them, to create them. And so we were professionals from very different museums, about 26 museums or more than 26 museums. And how can we create a project like this? We would like a walking museums without walls. And so someone speak about why don't we share? Why don't we make communications between our collections, our communities, and especially our village, where people, older people, normally cannot have so many cultural experience. And that's the way Museum in Village was born. And we could not operate it without SAMP. SAMP was really the organization, the professionals in the fields that worked with us. We worked with their creativity with the communities, because this project as museums, as objects, and music, dance, paintings, so many ways of expressing. And most important, I think, because I'm here talking in being a representative as of a very big group, I think that most important was the way we connected each other with the communities, but also with our between us as professionals. We made several meetings during this period where we always were evaluating the project, and we went through very difficult moments because it was a pandemic period. And this period was very difficult to the project, because the project was based on the working with people. How could we go to the village? How can we work with village where elder people were the most fragile persons? We could not talk with them. They had to be at home. So that was a challenge, a very big challenge that we could separate and find new ways of getting our proposal, and maybe that ways would make more sense like that, because when we could be together again, we saw that communities said so many times, "Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you so much for being here with us. We have this opportunity to go to the museums, and museums come to us." And there was a final meeting several months ago, and we saw tears in their faces. Everyone was like crying because the project ended. So I think that's the most important thing of this project. We would like us as professionals, but especially the participants, that the project has no end. So that's our best experience.
Beh, grazie davvero tantissime per questa presentazione che...
Thank you very much for your presentation. Here in Livorno, we are very touched too. Your words let us understand that your work has been very important, very involving for these small communities, small villages scattered in Portugal. For this reason, for the emotions that Doris explains, do you think that this kind of work made museums being more aware of the need to be closer and closer to the villages? What kind of continuity do you think it is possible to give to this work? How this work can have an impact on population, a long-standing impact, I mean?
I can start, and then Gabriela explain a little more. If I understand the question, because there were some lacks of sometimes. we were really concerned that we can go out of the museums, of the wall of the museums, to work with the small communities. And not only with the museums in that community. Some of those communities has no museums, but we would like that they can understand that what they have at home and what they are as people can be also considered very valuable for being a museum. And that's the museums can be in the streets. The museums can be in the center of all the village, as Gabriela shown in that in those pictures and in those video. And for us as professional, it was in the beginning difficult, special sometimes when we had to talk to our directors or our because as museums we have several rules about conservation, about curating the collections. How can an object go outside the museum and be in the middle of the community during several weeks, being touched by them? That was very discussed between us. But in the end, each museum found a solution, and each community found an object that represented that community, its identity, and to show to the museum of another village.
Yes, thank you, Doris. I think Doris tell everything. It was interesting because during this process, we could experience the museum experienced a totally different way. They couldn't experience the museum in a different way because we are talking about engagement. We are talking about timing. We couldn't take the village and take them just to the museum and they see the masterpiece there, but have the opportunity to take this masterpiece and have it in the heart of the village is a totally different experience. And of course, we take care of conservation issues, but it was very interesting because in some of cases, some examples that I show it today, the museum professionals, when they presented the object there, they also sensibilize it. They also create a moment to explain how to take care of this museum object. And some of the village took it very seriously, like the bench, for example. We left there for in the middle of the village. And of course, we go back there for a while to take if it's okay. And sometimes it was raining. Sometimes it was a little bit with dirt. But in the next day, I was there and it was totally clean. They cleaned the stone. They cleaned the marble. And this shows how engaged they was, how feeling responsibility for that masterpiece. They were very in this project. And we like to say that that there is a museum inside each village, as Doris said, because each one has their own collection of memories. Each one has their own objects, of meaningful objects in their own house. But there are also villages inside the museum, because the museum objects was made by the people, right?
E un'ultima domanda, c'è stata concordanza?
Did inhabitants agree upon the objects to make together, or was it difficult to make this collective decision? Did they discuss a lot, or did village people agree immediately on the object to make? That is, if you want to, I can
I can explain a little, but then I told you. I think that there were several moments of each with each village, some village, and that was a creative process, very discussed between them, not imposed by the sample or the born from the ideas of the own group. They were only, how can I say it, wake up their imagination, but not imposed. I think Gabriela can explain better, but it was very really participation with each one of the members of the project.
Yes, yes. We worked with 13 villages, and of course it was a challenge. This is a very good question. Thank you. Of course that it was a challenge in some villages, but other villages, they have already the notion what they really want to create. And it was a challenge because some of these communities never had the opportunity to create art together. So it was the first time that they were creating. So of course they had to discuss, they have to give their opinions, but everybody has the voice to say what they want, to incorporate what they would like to share. And that's how we got 13 diversity of results. Any one of this artwork, it's similar to the others village. It's totally different. So it was a very rich process.
I have a question, and I hope the answer will be short. What have been the involved skills in this project? Your choice was focused on elderly people. Did you also involve elderly people, doctors, or other professionals dealing with elderly people?
Let me try. I think I understand the question is if we involved other kinds of professionals, right, in this process?
Yes.
Yes. So SAMP has a team of artists. We are musicians, we are actors, we are artists that work with painting, and we had all this support team to help the elders with their own ideas. So, but we just help them to make their process happen, to make it materialize it. So in this process, we also sometimes invite other artists that has the same, how can I say, the same kind of work that can help these senior citizens to create their own artwork. But this didn't happen in all the villages. It was just in specific ones, because the other ones, almost the whole part of the process, it was they created by their own hands, and they created. We are not very concerned about the aesthetic result. We are very concerned about the process, but fortunately we have very beautiful results, very appealing narratives, and sometimes they was working for the first time with that kind of material. For example, the street art. This group of ladies, they already create art by themselves, so we challenge them to create something that they never tried. But other communities, they never worked, for example, with clay. And in that territory, there's a lot of clay. So they started to create by their own hands. Yes.
Perfetto, grazie veramente, grazie tantissime.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. Thank you, Doris, for your presentation, a wonderful description of your project. Thank you very much. Time flies, so half an hour for each project is definitely a very short time, but now we have to run up. So we have Peter Coles from London. And in this case, we have a natural heritage, not a cultural one. London tried to raise the awareness of people for nature. Peter established and developed this project. So now he's going to tell us everything about his work. Peter?
Right. Just have to, can you all see the screen, my share screen?
Yes.
Good. Right, hang on just a second. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I am very honored to be here, and it also helps me as a part of a country which is trying to, through its government, separate itself from Europe. It gives me the opportunity to ensure that we're still very well connected. Right, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to see, first of all, to explain a little bit about the unusual nature of this project, which brings together natural heritage and the built heritage. And it uses a non-native tree, the mulberry tree, as a kind of a link between these two. So I thought I'd just spend a little while explaining why the mulberry tree. The mulberry tree is not native to Britain. It's been here since the Roman times, and it was also part of the infirmary gardens of monasteries during the Middle Ages. But the real kind of moment when mulberry trees started to become quite common in the UK, but they've never been common, but was in around the early 17th century, when King James I wanted to start a silk industry in the United Kingdom, and well, in England at the time, and imported from France and the Netherlands mostly hundreds of thousands of mulberry trees to feed the silkworms. This project, they were to be planted in the grounds of people, aristocrats and so on, who had large houses and large parks and gardens. For various reasons, partly the weather, partly the discovery of the colonies in North America, the project didn't succeed, and it's sort of faded away very quickly. But it did leave a legacy of mulberry trees, and many of these have survived. Now, in the southeast of England, where most of these trees were planted, urban development is gradually expanded, and a lot of the gardens and parks have disappeared. The mansion houses, also things like psychiatric hospitals that had large grounds, they've kind of been sold off and developed. But for some reason, the mulberry trees that were in those gardens have survived. So if you look at the landscape really in urban areas of southern England, especially southern England, you will find mulberry trees that can be even 500, 400, 300, 200 years old, that are standing where there used to be something else other than what is there today. And this could be a mansion house or some other kind of a building. So these trees, in a way, are invitations to explore the history, which is what this project is about. And the mulberry trees themselves are all located through a citizen science project, which was funded originally by the Heritage Lottery Fund for 2 years. Now, I'm going to see if I can show a little video. This has two functions, really. One is to describe the project very quickly. And the second is, it was one of the first things that we did when we had the money from the Heritage Lottery Fund. We did two big things to begin with. One is to set up a website as an interactive platform where people could let us know of their mulberry trees. And secondly, they could also use a map as part of this website to find any old mulberry trees near them, and to then subsequently to learn about the history of the area and what may have been there once and is not there any longer. So let's hope. Just need to get this going. I hope this is going to work.
Peter.
Yep. Hello. You cannot hear the sound. Hello? Hello. Ah. Not sure what's happened. I can't hear you all of a sudden. Am I assuming you can't hear the sound?
Sì, fallo, mi pare più.
Ma devo bloccare qui.
Bloccalo.
Ok.
Hello? Yeah. Can you still hear me? I'm sort of feeling I'm sort of a little bit on my own.
I can hear you.
You can. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know what happened then, whether you could hear the sound of the film or not. But anyway.
I don't know. We didn't hear the sound, but it was informative anyway.
Okay, well, we'll carry on. So the project started in 2016 with a 2-year grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund given to the Conservation Foundation, which was set up in the 1970s to sort of encourage interest in the environment and environmental conservation. And the idea behind this project really was to raise awareness of our heritage through a blend of citizen science, that all of the input to this project really comes from the general public through the website, but also to raise awareness of our natural heritage using these old mulberry trees as a way to encourage interest in these very old trees and the importance of our landscape. And also built heritage. This photograph actually shows a 12th century monastery, and that beautiful tree in the background is a mulberry. And the mulberry tree actually is really what attracts attention to that particular site. And through attracting attention to the site where you see the ruins of the monastery, it actually turns out that something has completely disappeared from the site, which is actually also very interesting, which is the house of the abbot, which was turned into a farm. And that farm existed up until the 1930s, but there's no trace of it anymore, except for the mulberry tree that was probably planted as part of the farm and not as part of the monastery. That's an example. Some of these trees occur in places where they're much older than the surrounding buildings. And the question that the project sort of asks is, why are they there? And very often people have an affection for the tree, which I'll come back to in a moment. And that actually helps to encourage interest in the history of the surroundings that may have disappeared under development. This tree is in a part of southeast London. And when you find this next to a housing development, it turns out this is the second time this area has been developed for housing. But the tree is still there. So this was in the 1960s. And if you go back even further, you find out that there was a boys' school here in the 19th century, in Victorian times, and that tree was planted in the playground. So through this tree, which is present now in the street, you can go back and discover that it's on the site of a school which has disappeared probably now 70 years ago. And it's a little bit like this film from Buster Keaton, I remember, Steamboat Bill, where he's standing there and a part of the building falls down. Somehow it just misses him and he's still standing there. And the project is rather like that. So why mulberry trees? Mulberry trees have a lot of affection in the public here. They're associated with childhood, with good times, with fun. And people who know of a mulberry tree know the fruit is delicious, and they associate it with kind of good things. So there's an affection for them. And we have a song here called "Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush." But in fact, the mulberry tree is not British. It's not an English tree at all. It originates around from the Caspian Sea, the black mulberry. It sort of came to this country partly with the Romans, but also to a large extent because of this the silk industry. But the point of this project is the many veteran mulberry trees surviving have their roots in gardens that have been lost. This seminar today is really about participation and citizen participation. So that's what I'm going to concentrate on now. A very central part of this whole project is the website. And this is the kind of, it's an interactive website, and it's where the general public will get in touch with the project and will give us information about trees that they know of. But it's also where they can go to find out of other trees. They can find out the history of the surroundings of trees that we've already mapped and that we've done some research on. And it's also a place where they can go to find out perhaps information on how to look after their tree, or about mulberry trees in general, and so on. So this is the project started off with a certain amount of publicity, really, that we used as many contacts as we could find in the press and radio and so on, to notify the general public that there was this survey going on of mulberry trees, and to invite people to access the website either through a mobile phone or the internet through a laptop or a computer, and to add details of a mulberry tree that they might know of. It didn't have to be an old one. We're also interested in trees being planted today. Once they'd identified these trees, it appeared in a database that the project had access to. And we would then research any old trees and see if we could find out something about what may have been there before any development that occurred around the tree. And we would then post that on the website, maybe write a blog about it and so on. So this would then be a growing resource. And when we started in 2016, I'd been working on this for 4 or 5 years before, but when we got the Heritage Lottery funding in 2016, there were fewer than 100 mulberry trees recorded in different databases. And to now, we have something like 1,500. It's growing all the time on an online map. And composed of those databases that existed and people adding them, and myself adding them over the months and years. Now, this works two ways with a project like this, because people taking part in the survey tell us of a tree, and then we can research this tree, and then we might discover something that we didn't know about that particular location and its history. And it's enabled us to discover many, many sites of historical interest that had really been forgotten. The illustration in this particular picture is of a tree that's in a common garden surrounded by apartment buildings, but it actually is on the site of a silk project from the 18th century. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So really, given how much of the surface of the London area and the cities around London is covered with buildings now, only 100 or 200 years ago, many of these places were gardens and associated with large houses or psychiatric hospitals or something. And miraculously, and for reasons we don't always understand, the mulberry trees have survived. Now, the history of mulberries goes back to Roman times, and pips from the seeds of the mulberries were found near London Bridge, for example, and in other places in the country. And they were also planted in infirmary gardens because they have medicinal values, the fruit and the leaves and the bark and so on. And they were planted in the 16th century very often for the value of the fruit. If you had a dinner and you invited all your aristocratic friends, if you had a mulberry tree, you could serve them fruit, and which they couldn't get any other way. The fruit doesn't dry, and you can't dry it, and it doesn't travel. So you could show off to your friends. So there are associations with Tudor buildings as well. The Silk Project, which James I tried to start, involved the plantation of many mulberry trees altogether to feed the silkworms. But as the project failed, these trees remained, and they became what are known as mulberry gardens, which then in turn didn't really necessarily have mulberry trees in, but they became pleasure gardens where people would hang out and associate, especially in the 17th century and the 18th century. So there are traces of these as well in the game. Many 17th century houses actually still have mulberry trees, but the interest is not really in these because the gardens survive. It's in the ones that have in more unusual places. So the little picture in the inset is outside a little corner shop, this tree, but this tree is much older than the corner shop and the houses around it. And research shows that it belonged to this mansion that you can see in the other picture, where the diarist Dr. Johnson lived for a little while in the 18th century. So the house has completely disappeared. All of the land around it's been developed. And yet this mulberry tree is still there. So it's a kind of a window into the past. In the 19th century, mulberry trees were planted in parks as part of their landscaping projects. There's nothing particularly surprising about these trees when you go there. These are trees that were planted in the parks roughly when the parks were created. So what has the project done? It's started to raise awareness about, and it's become an educational historical resource for the general public, but also a research resource for scholars, I suppose. A lot of the potential of the project is still untapped. Just to reiterate how it works, so a member of the public will enter details of an interesting mulberry tree that they have, which could be old or might not necessarily be. We then look up its history, publish details on the map, and possibly a blog article which will go into further depth. This particular tree was notified to us by a member of the public. I went to see it. I realized it was very old, researched it, and found out that it was actually the only survivor of something like 2,000 that were built on a site in Chelsea in southwest London to, again, provide leaves for a silk industry to feed the silkworms. That didn't only lasted about 3 years and it disappeared. The mulberry trees stayed for about another 20, 30 years, and then they were gradually dug up and the land was gradually developed. But this tree, miraculously, has survived as the only witness. Now, you could go at this the other way. You could look at a map of London on our website, and you could look at this part of London, Elm Park Gardens, at the top of the screen. And if you clicked on the little sticker there, you would get this little pop-up window. And that would then open another window, which would give you a little history of the project. And in some cases, for very interesting projects, you would have a link to a blog article that I would write or somebody else would be invited to write, which gives a history of the whole area and the project and why that tree is there and how it's changed over the centuries and years. So it's really a way of protecting our heritage, cultural heritage, as well as the history of our built heritage in the face of development. And this is relentless. I'm constantly being asked to step in to see if we can do something to preserve a tree which is going to be destroyed as developers come in to develop a building. Now, the good example of this is the London Hospital. chest hospital, the City Hospital for Diseases of the Chest, in a poor part of East London called Bethnal Green. This hospital building still exists, but it stopped being a hospital about 6 years ago or something. And the idea was to demolish parts of it or turn them into apartments. But standing in the ground is this old mulberry tree, and through a whole campaign of publicity, the developers wanted to move this tree or to chop it down so that they could build on the site. But there was such a large public protest that a national campaign, well, actually a campaign in the national press and so on, started to stop the developers from removing the tree, which meant that their development couldn't go ahead. It then turned out, after a whole process, that the development had to stop and that the tree was preserved, and the developers had to then take into account the mulberry tree and not destroy it. And this is a first of its kind. And tomorrow, in fact, no, Tuesday next week, I'm seeing the tree person responsible for the new development, because the developers have had to change their development to preserve the tree, which is really quite remarkable. Another part of our project and what we've done to engage the public is to, in a couple of sites, we've commissioned craftspeople to design this kind of installation, which gives history of that particular tree. We've put up some signage and so on. I'm now trying to get some funding for a project to distribute QR codes, these little codes that you can then attach to a tree or to somewhere near it, that will, if you scan it, take the person to the website where they will learn more information about it. And this is quite cheap to do. I could do it on my own, really, and if I could get to enough places, but we might involve volunteers in doing this. We also distributed, in the early days of the project, 100 saplings to community gardens and schools for them to get interested in growing the tree and learning about mulberry trees and the silk industry in the past. It also turns out, just accidentally, that because the mulberry tree comes from places around the Caspian Sea, like Iran and southern Italy as well, and Spain, France, that there is also a diaspora, people living in London, who use mulberry fruit in their cooking, for example. And I've discovered that many Iranians and Nepalese and some other people are using our map in order to find fruit in the summer so that they can go to harvest the fruit and use them to make dishes that are traditional at home, but that they didn't know they could actually cook here, because you can't get mulberry fruit, you can't buy it here. We organize a series of walks to link up places that have no other real connection sometimes than that there are mulberry trees that we use as waypoints. We walk from one mulberry tree to another, and that can explore either Roman London or Saxon London, or it can explore a hidden river or some other part of history. And this is a very important part of the work that we do. And we always get a good turnout on these walks. I actually led one yesterday and another one I'm doing on Sunday. I helped to set up something called the Urban Tree Festival, which makes tries to raise awareness about our heritage of old trees, and also the importance of trees for fighting climate change and so on. And this is not necessarily our project. Morris Londinium was one of the 4 founders of this project, which is now huge. It's got a lot of sponsorship and a lot of activities going on at the same time, and it's actually going on this week. Another way that we raise awareness and that we actually try to encourage interest in our project and for people to take an active part in it is through different kinds of publications, blogs, and magazines, and I even took part in a radio program in the southern part of the United States. I was asked to contribute to a program about cookery, actually. We were also invited to contribute the cultural input to a scientific website that talks about different species of trees, called Trees and Shrubs Online, which is a big reference for the reference to go to. And I was invited to contribute the cultural content, history content to that. I recently contributed to a book on textiles and clothing published by the National Museum of Silk in China with UNESCO. And we recently got an award too from the Tree Register of Britain and Ireland, which is recording veteran trees to go and record more trees outside of the London area. One of the other things, yes, sorry. Come on.
No, we are running out of time, so.
Yep, okay, just finished now, just researching an old 16th century mulberry orchard. We have an uncertain future, but there we are.
Ok, allora, grazie.
I have to stop my share somehow.
No, vabbè. Allora, grazie.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this excellent idea and for developing this initiative throughout the years. It's quite a long life experience, a lifelong experience, sorry. And you are talking about also the funding. How can you organize and manage the funding, and how this kind of project can be in the long run sustainable?
That's the big question, really. I think probably I'm going to have to try crowdfunding. The Heritage Lottery Fund, who gave us money in the first case, we applied to them for some continuing funding. But because they have their own kind of competition for funding, they weren't keen. But we're trying again to link the mulberry tree with other old trees like the yew and the oak and others that may have heritage connections in a Heritage Trees project. And we have an application going on at the moment. Basically, once the website is established as it is, it requires maintenance. Otherwise, the Google search engines don't go there any longer, and otherwise also people can, hackers can come in and destroy the website. So the website has to be active. In other words, we have to keep continuing to put new articles in, it has to change and so on. So it does need some kind of maintenance, but that maintenance is not what it was at the beginning. So what we need is to keep the website alive. In other words, pay for the subscriptions for the website hosting, and also perhaps could be done as a volunteer to contribute articles and so on, make sure it's all going on. So the maintenance is not so great after a certain time. And I can pay for some of that by doing walks, organizing conferences and so on that people actually pay to come on. But it does need funding, and it's a big problem. Maybe crowdfunding, that may be what I have to do next.
Ho capito, grazie davvero. Ci sono altre domande per Peter?
Thank you very much. Do you have any other question for Peter? Congratulations again, and thank you for these presentations. We are running out of time, but not that much. And now let's fly to Finland.
Homeland è il titolo.
Return to the Sami Holland is the title of the project created by the National Museum of Finland, but as the title says, the National Museum in Helsinki has brought back to the Sami land some objects that were part of this territory. So objects were brought back. There has been a local action, but that doesn't not mean that these objects are not important, because these objects were brought back to the community. So now I'm going to welcome Elina Antila and Elisa Sarpo. The first one is the general director, and the other person is a community manager of the National Museum of Finland. Thank you, Finland. Give the floor to Elina and Elisa. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you on my behalf. My first question is that can you see my presentation on the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, great. So we will share.
Wait, can you put it in presentation mode, please?
I have actually done it, but then maybe I share it once again. I put it into presentation mode, but What about this? Oh no, I have to put the sound also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can you see it now correctly?
Yes.
All right. In presentation mode as well. Good. So we are sharing this with Elisa. So I will try to be short. I just want to tell something about why we repatriated these, and of course it has to do with the engagement and community aspect that Elisa is then telling more in detail. Let me see how to proceed with this. Because is it moving now forward? There's a black page now. Is it correct?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So I first wanted to put here a video because it tells the whole story so that you can get into this subject more easily. So I will put it on now.
In autumn 2021, the National Museum of Finland returned its Sami collection to the Sami Museum Cedar. The collection contains circa 2,200 artifacts compiled over 170 years. The project Return to the Sami Homeland returned the oldest and largest Sami collection in Finland to the Sami people living in Samiland. This is known as repatriation. Typically a complex, long process, this repatriation was fostered by a devoted cooperation between the National Museum of Finland and the Sami Museum Cedar, and the support from the Finnish government. The different phases of the repatriation project engaged almost 300 members of the Sami community. For the first time, they could come into contact with the artifacts of their ancestors. Some of these artifacts had been stored for more than 100 years. The younger generations had never seen them. The repatriation returned the ownership of this unique cultural property to the Sami people. They can now tell their own history. The National Museum of Finland and the Sami Museum Cedar produced an exhibition on the Sami people and its cultural heritage and history.
Juhlimme saamelaiskokoelman paluuta Saamenmaalle ja saamelaisten haltuun. Ja sitä, että Saamelaismuseo Siida ja Suomen kansallismuseo sekä monet tärkeät ihmiset olemme voineet tehdä tätä kaikkea yhdessä.
It was exhibited in the National Museum in Helsinki, and it was accompanied by public events, guided tours and seminars to raise awareness and understanding of the Sami in Finland. Throughout the process, the museum professionals learned from each other. The staff of the National Museum learned about the Sami identity and the colonialism and assimilation policy directed towards the Sami people by the Finnish government.
Siis tällä tuoda fina ässiä tätä pohte ruoftolotta tehke mitjitte ja ahte mi adjuhtai min mattari tinkka ja tävviri tehke sämmai ruoftolotta.
The Sami are the only indigenous people in Europe. To promote European values and strengthen the resilience of the European community, it is important to look at the past openly and honestly. We must cherish the diversity of the European identity. Culture and cultural heritage have an important role in our efforts to improve dialogue and understanding.
So that's what happened. And we have a lot of discussion about repatriations, and there are various reasons and various situations where they are taking place. And I think that in this case, and very often, we must remember that there are laws and regulations which kind of control how we act. But I think that the most important thing is maybe the change in the museum practices and the change in the way we look at our own work. So the key starting point for this repatriation and many others is very often the mission we have for engaging communities and making cultural history matter to all people. And I think what we very often forget is that museums are not working for themselves. So we very often speak about that we are collecting things for the future. So we have to test it now. Every day we have to see how these things serve the communities and serve the people. So we are working for them. And what we do in our work is to connect people with their heritage and with their cultural identity. And then we also provide a space for dialogue between these, because we have a kind of dual mission. And this is on the one hand to make identities stronger and give the possibilities for people to strengthen their cultural identities. But then, of course, when we see that we have different identities, we have to also have communication between them and also a peaceful dialogue between different identities. And when we decided about these repatriation, there are, of course, many possibilities. There have been Sami repatriations in the northern Europe or also elsewhere, and they are all different in nature a bit. But for us, we saw that we really needed to give full ownership to the Sami. So if there is speeches about lending objects and like having a long-term lending solutions, so that was not the right thing here. It was a question of full ownership to the Sami. And this is because they really had to have, through this ownership, the control over the representation of their past and present. The Sami history and Sami past had so long been told and presented by others than the Sami themselves, and now they would control it. And the other thing was that we needed to give the entire collection and not just make a selection out of it, which is also one thing that some museums have done, but we didn't want to do it that way. So we just gave the entire collection. And this is not just a matter, just a thing that we would do for the Sami. We do it for the whole society, because it's the benefit of the whole society that there are cultural rights protected and given to everyone in the society. And this is one of the main points in our process. And as you will see here from Elisa, our staff was very much involved. And I think that this is also one important matter in this whole project, that our staff also learned a lot. We were all changing our ideas and we were all experiencing new things. So this is as important as what it meant to the Sami. So in this, I will give the space to Elisa to continue from here. Thank you on my behalf. Please, Elisa, go ahead.
So, hello from my behalf. So I first share the screen. Now, can you see it full screen?
Not the full screen yet. You have the working mode.
Okay, I just put it on the full screen, so maybe it takes a minute, or then I had to share it again.
You can try it now.
Stop the share. So maybe now?
It's still not yet the presentation mode.
Okay.
But
so
just push the button once again.
So I see the full screen, but if maybe you don't.
No, I think the same happened to me, but
But it's
I don't know
okay.
what I did.
It's okay.
Right.
I continue. So
Right. Please continue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So as told, I'm Elisa Sarvo and I work as community manager. And in this homecoming exhibition, which celebrated the return of the Sami collection, I worked as an executive producer of the audience program. So I describe in this presentation how we worked in cooperation with indigenous people. So the program of this exhibition was the first community-based entirety of this scale. The exhibition program concepts were designed for the needs of the Sami community, together with an exhibition working group consisting of employees from the National Museum of Finland and Sami Museum Sida, and Sami artists and activists. The exhibition group named Sami activists Petra Laiti to plan the concepts together with me. The concepts were approved by the exhibition group. Intercultural dialogue was clearly activated between Sami and non-Sami cultural heritage professionals involved in the project. The decision made in producing contents to the exhibition or choices in organizing programs were all issues of dialogue and interaction. Internal program, educational program, and audience program were the approved concepts. So today I'll focus on this internal program. The objective of both the exhibition project and the audience program was to raise awareness in the museum industry, how to cooperate in an equal manner with the indigenous people. We wanted to approach all the activities aimed at the target groups while retaining humanity, empathy, knowledge, and emotions at the core. Additionally, the guiding principle informing the concepts were that the program opens paths for other minorities as well, and that the museum can and should be criticized. The repatriation and its preparations have been a long process, during which we at the museum have had a good opportunity to reflect together on what kind of power is related to our work, whose stories we recount in our museum, whose voices are given a platform, and what the reason is for that the fact that the voice of some population group is still missing. How do the museum operations support diverse use of history as well as inclusive operating methods? Despite the issues, discourses, and concepts of repatriation, such as Finnish colonialism, decolonization, and cultural appropriation, racialization, and the politics of recognition being familiar to many people carrying out the collection work, common understanding on these issues spanning the whole organization did not exist. The prerequisite for planning the program and communicating about it was to understand the discourses and concepts related to Sami issues. We interviewed several people working on the collection in order to discover the actual needs for education. The internal program was based on this common thought process with our staff and with Sami people. So I don't see nothing here, no text, but maybe you do.
Elisa, the presentation is not going forward, so we still the first page.
Okay, so sorry.
Yeah, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, okay, no, I just continue. So if it doesn't work, so So the internal program learned and discussed repatriation, the importance of managing and owning cultural heritage, the exercise of power by museums, and the relationship between majority population and the indigenous people, primarily within the framework of Sami culture and the Finnish majority culture. The internal program consisted 4 parts. The first of which began with the display of the Sami director Suvi West documentary film Eatnameamet, Our Silent Struggle, and discussion on the film and current Sami issues from the perspective of an indigenous people. The film tackles the Sami current situation and feelings and attempts to find solutions for a better future. The second part of the internal program, the Finland and Colonialism event, focused on the work done in the National Museum of Finland regarding matters of repatriation. Researchers from the University of Oulu and Helsinki, who have researched Finnish colonialism, had a discussion with the collection researchers of the National Museum of Finland and the Sami Museum Sida. At the center of the discussion were questions about how the museum materials and the colonialism discourse are related. What do we talk about when we talk about colonization in the context of Finland and the National Museum of Finland? How do we identify colonialistic characteristics or ones comparable to colonialism in the history of our collections? The discussion included reflection on how decolonization can change museum work. Then the third part of the program, public institutions as places of recognition, power and responsibility in the work to strengthen participation, was aimed at the units working on the exhibition. The event discussed the reason why public institutions should continuously evaluate their own operations in relation to the realization of human freedom and rights. What kind of power do institutions, such as museums, have in the social struggle for recognition, and how could this position be used in the creation of more equal and just world for all population groups? The third part of this program, the dismantling stereotypes training, was aimed at those working with customer interface. In the event, Petra Laiti trained the participants on what kind of racism is directed at the Sami in Finland and how the racism they encounter manifests in the Finnish society, culture, and entertainment industry. The objective was to help our staff to defend the narrative of this exhibition. So, a few words about the evaluation and remedial process. So, none of us without us has been the guiding principle of all our cooperation. Museum staff has stated that without internal training and discussion, the right kind of public program could not have been produced. Re-examining and redefining the museum work and changing customary manners is no easy task. During the process, we recognize many needs for learning. Adopting equal, community-based working methods requires several discussions and fact-finding. Many areas of the process poses challenges. Reaching common ground and understanding cultural codes and the perspective of the indigenous people did not always go smoothly. The different units of the museum were able to adopt new kinds of work measures at different paces. Due to the coronavirus, the internal training had to be organized relatively late. The earlier the training could have been organized, the smoother the process would likely have been. And we were also not prepared for the production of the Sami culture to be expensive, due to long distances. Creating equal cooperation requires time, sensitivity, and discussions. It was very rewarding, fruitful, and affable to work with the Sami community. Within the exhibition, the program was important for citizens' engagement and awareness raising, which aims to achieve a cultural sustainable Europe by promoting understanding of and the discussion about cultural rights, ownership to cultural heritage, diversity, intercultural dialogue, decolonization, and repatriation. Due to the complexity of Sami issues, it would have been impossible to create a program that meets the goals without partners. In particular, the staff of the exhibition working group and the Sami Museum SIDA played a decisive role in creating this program. So, thank you on my behalf.
Allora, grazie davvero Elisa per questo veramente bellissimo progetto. Io volevo chiedervi di andare un po' più nel...
Thank you, Elisa, for this marvelous project. I would like to...
di difficoltà che avete avuto. All'inizio della mattina qui Francesca Merz, che è con noi, ci ha parlato di esperienze museografiche in cui anche le difficoltà che si sono trovate nel lavorare con le comunità hanno trovato posto all'interno dell'esposizione museale.
And that was important because it is important for a dialogue between museum and communities. And then you also talked about projects, or even in your painters, in your captions. Do you have the direct witness of the Sami population? Do you have some real involvement of these people, of the community?
We just the exhibition group who made
mostra. Scusate, sembra ci sia un problema di collegamento.
So I'm not sure what is the question. Oh.
I don't know. I don't know if I have to speak English or Italian. Can you hear me in English? So I summarize my question in English.
I can hear you.
So it was a two-side question. First of all, I wanted to know if the voice of the Sami people was part of the exhibition in terms of panels, for instance, or audio guide or whatever, if there was something that they directly, so if they were speaking directly to the visitors of the exhibition. And the second was that, Elisa talked about some difficulties in dialogue with the Sami people, and I can imagine, usually, sometimes you have different points of view. And Francesca Merz, at the beginning of this morning, she was talking about same difficulties that people in Australia, I think, have had with the Aboriginals. And these difficulties and this kind of dialogue was then expressed in the exhibition as well. So it was explained to the visitors, the dialogue and the difficulties that this dialogue involved, dialogue between the museum people and the indigenous people. So how did you react to these kinds of problems?
Do you, Elina, want to tell more about this exhibition project?
Well, I can say some words shortly. the Sami voice was very much present there. There were also Sami artists and their works, like modern Sami works of art, which spoke directly with their voice and their presence. And of course, it was the first exhibition, I think, in Finland where all the 3 Sami languages which were spoken in Finland, Finnish territory, were also written on the walls and so on. So I don't remember about audio guides whether or not, but anyway, it was the strong presence of the Sami voice in the exhibition. And whether the exhibition was kind of about these struggles to understand each other, I don't know so much. I think that the struggles were kind of confronted in every visitor, because we had a questionnaire in the exhibition that has your understanding about the Sami culture change or Sami history change through this exhibition, and the answer was very often yes. So people just recognize their own feelings that I didn't know this, I didn't understand this history, and of course when they saw the stories told by the Sami, they understand the kind of difference there is between the ideas, but we didn't directly tell about these differences, I think. What do you say, Elisa?
Yes, the whole exhibition was made from the Sami perspective. So it was led by Sami activists and artists. And they were also, of course, the language was the big part of the exhibition. Everything was written first on the Sami languages, and then Finnish and Swedish and English at the bottom. So that was the one way of also bringing the identity strongly to the audience. And some of the objectives also in the exhibition were also only for Sami people, so they didn't have any context that the majority could relate on. So they were also only hints for Sami people, and it was the main target group of the exhibition was Sami people, and after that other target groups. So it was the first exhibition in Finland about Sami people, which was made by Sami themselves for the Sami people. And also then the audience program were led in the same kind of process. So we had a lot of program, and because of the lack of time, I could only tell about this internal program, because it was also for us, for the museum professionals, the key to do that. So because we need the education about these issues. And I have to say that in Finland, we don't have enough knowledge about Sami people and their history. So it's there's a huge gap that we have, and that was really wonderful that we could tell the big population about these Sami struggles and issues, but it's still a lot of things to cap.
So thank you very much. But now, I mean, the question is, what next?
If I may answer to this, so
Yeah.
Of course, when we agreed about the repatriation, the Sami Museum Sida had to build a whole new annex to the building to house these new collections, and they also made a new basic exhibition to their museum, which was opened a year ago or something like that. So I think that the work starts there now, so that they are engaging all the time, the Sami people. They have been inviting them from different areas in Finland to operate with the objects and to handle them, to tell their stories about these objects and to connect their own histories with the objects, and that's happening constantly. And they have this process in the hands of the Sami Museum. So we are presenting the National Museum here, and we cannot tell more about that, but I know it's an important part of the activities of the Sami Museum Sida.
Yeah, and a short comment also that we really learned much about this equal community-based working, and so we continue to work in this way with other minorities as well and other community as well. So it has been a huge impact for us that we had the possibility to learn so much. So of course we want to continue with the Sami people, but also with other minorities as well, and learn more.
And we have to make, for instance, exhibitions about the Sami in the future as well. So we will operate, and we will also borrow those objects back to our museum to exhibitions. So it's not kind of an end of anything that we have repatriated them. It's a start.
Bene, io vi ringrazio veramente tanto.
I really do thank you very much. Are there any further questions? We are running out of time. We are a little bit behind of schedule, but it was worth it because today we listened to good examples and inspiring examples of projects, and that was really fruitful for our audience. So I would like to thank you on behalf of Fondazione Alaia for these enthusiastic participations of the winners of the European Heritage Awards. And now one point, sorry. These presentations should be sent. We would like to have your presentations. So I imagine you already got your slides. So we would like to receive a copy of your presentations, because we would like to gather all the relevant material in an online publication that will be shared in our on our websites, and that could be it will be possible to share all this knowledge all together. And this is another testimony of how all these projects have been spread and developed also in our country. We know that apart for the audience, we have a lot of people connected online with us. So we would like to thank you for your participation. Now we are closing the session for our lunch break. So we will convene again at 2:30 p.m. And for the afternoon, your Zoom link is a different one. So we have sent you the second link. Be just careful to connect on the right link for the afternoon. So see you in 1 hour and 30 minutes time.